156,000 people. That's the entire population of Curaçao, a Caribbean island so small you've probably scrolled past it on Google Maps without noticing. And yet, on a November night in Kingston, Jamaica, surrounded by 35,000 fans who wanted them destroyed, this team did something no nation their size has ever done in the history of football. They qualified for the World Cup. Not a nation of millions with academies and budgets and generational talent pipelines. A 444 square kilometre island in the southern Caribbean. Players who hold down regular jobs. A coaching staff that communicates across 3 different continents. And somehow, they held on. This is the story of how Curaçao pulled off one of the most improbable things in football history. And I promise you, the truth is stranger than anything you could make up. How small is small? Before November 2025, the record for the smallest nation to ever qualify for a World Cup belonged to Iceland, a country of around 370,000 people. Curaçao has 156,000. They didn't just break Iceland's record, they obliterated it. By landmass, by population, by any metric you choose, nothing like this has ever happened before. The island sits 60 kilometers off the northern coast of Venezuela. It's part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, a constituent country, like a Caribbean version of an autonomous region, known for its stunning coloured architecture, crystal clear water, and a culture that is a genuinely unique blend of Dutch, African, Portuguese, and Caribbean. The official language is Papiamento, a Portuguese Creole. Dutch is spoken. Spanish bleeds in from Venezuela across the water. It is, in every sense, a place where worlds collide. But world-class football, that was never supposed to happen here. The history, and why this matters so much. To understand what qualification means to the people of Curaçao, you need to know a little of what they've been through. The Dutch colonized the island in 1634, and by the 18th century it had become one of the main hubs of the transatlantic slave trade under the Dutch West India Company. Slavery was abolished, but the inequality and anger it left behind didn't disappear with it. In 1969, riots burned parts of the capital Willemstad to the ground, the product of decades of racial discrimination, job losses from oil refinery layoffs, and resentment toward the Netherlands. The island only formally became the country of Curaçao in 2010. So when those players collapsed on the pitch in Kingston and wept, they weren't just crying about a football result. They were carrying something much heavier than that. Their football history is modest, but not without pride. As the Netherlands Antilles, they had top 2 finishes in 4 consecutive CONCACAF tournaments in the 1960s. As the modern nation of Curaçao, only a separate FIFA member since 2011, they'd had some encouraging runs in the Gold Cup, reaching the quarterfinals in 2019 under previous Dutch coaching legends Patrick Kluivert and Guus Hiddink. But a World Cup? That felt like someone else's dream. The turning point, Dick Advocaat. Then came the Little General. In late 2023, with their qualifying campaign approaching, Curaçao's Football Federation was in a mess. Players weren't being paid. FIFA was watching the association closely. Players were flying to matches in 6-seater planes. It was, in every sense, a federation punching well below even its own modest weight. Their first choices to fix it? Bert van Marwijk, Louis van Gaal, Fred Rutten, all said no. Van Gaal apparently declined because, and I quote, he couldn't become world champion with them. Right, we'll come back to that. Eventually, they made the call that changed everything. They rang Dick Advocaat, 78 years old, a man who had managed Rangers, PSV, Zenit St. Petersburg, where he won the UEFA Cup. A man who had coached the Netherlands, Russia, Belgium and South Korea at major tournaments. A man whose nickname, the Little General, was inherited from his mentor, Rinus Michels, the father of total football. Advocaat didn't say yes immediately. He'd seen the state of the federation and made it clear, get your house in order first. Sponsors came in, organisation improved, and in January 2024, the Little General arrived in Curaçao with one last impossible mission. At an age when most coaches are writing their memoirs, Dick Advocaat was building a World Cup squad, the squad, La Familia Azul. Here's where the story gets really interesting. How do you build a World Cup squad from an island of 156,000 people? You make phone calls. Advocaat and his staff went hunting through the Dutch football system. Academies, lower leagues, players who had drifted from the Dutch national setup and held Curaçaoan heritage through their parents or grandparents. He rang players like Rashid Davicevic, Armando Obispo, Joshua Brené, and Tahith Chong, who, remarkably, is the only player in the qualifying squad actually born on the island, having left for the Netherlands at age 8 as a former Manchester United academy product. Some of these players had represented the Netherlands at youth level. One had even played in a Dutch qualifier in 2016. When Advocaat called, some said no, but most said yes, because he wasn't just offering them a shirt, he was offering them a story, a mission, a family. That's exactly what they became. La Familia Azul, the Blue Family. Players from Rotherham in League One, from the Turkish Second Division, from the Belgian top flight. Journeymen by European standards. But together, they were something else entirely. And importantly, they weren't pretty. They were hard to beat. Defensively organised, tactically disciplined, efficient. The hallmarks of every team Advocaat has ever built. They weren't there to entertain neutrals. They were there to make history. The qualifying campaign. When Advocaat took over, Curaçao sat 91st in the FIFA World Rankings. What followed was a qualifying campaign that slowly, game by game, turned whispers into belief. In the second round, they were ruthless. 6 games, 6 wins, 15 goals scored, just 2 conceded. Perfect. Group stage done. The final round was tougher. Their group contained Trinidad and Tobago, Bermuda and Jamaica, nations with far deeper footballing roots. They drew their opener 0-0 away in Trinidad, then beat Bermuda 3-2 at home with Tahith Chong scoring a brace, beat Jamaica 2-0 at home, drew 1-1 with Trinidad and Tobago at home. Then in November, Trinidad did them a massive favour, holding Jamaica to a 1-1 draw, while Curaçao demolished Bermuda 7-0. The equation was simple. Go to Kingston, get a draw, go to the World Cup. The night in Kingston. 35,000 Jamaican fans. Reggae boys who needed a win to keep their own World Cup dream alive. An atmosphere that could strip paint off walls. For 90 minutes, Curaçao defended like their lives depended on it. Jamaica hit the woodwork 3 times in the second half. Every set piece was an act of collective terror. Then, deep in injury time, the referee pointed to the spot. Penalty to Jamaica. The dream, right there, about to be stolen in the cruelest way possible. Then the VAR review. The referee jogged back to the spot. He waved it off. No penalty. The final whistle came minutes later. 0-0. It was over. Players fell to the ground. Some cried. Some just stood there, unable to process what had happened. Winger Kenji Gore, barely able to speak, said it best. "I've got no words. I'm so proud of the boys. I can't breathe. I can't function. This is a dream come true." Dick Advocaat, who had to miss the match for personal family reasons, was watching from afar as his team, his family, delivered the greatest result in their nation's history. He later called it the most extraordinary achievement of his entire career. A career that included managing at World Cups, winning European trophies, coaching some of the greatest clubs on the planet. And yet, this was the one. The meaning. Back in Willemstad, the streets erupted. Blue and white everywhere. A carnival that hadn't been planned because, deep down, nobody had quite dared to believe it would actually happen. Think about what this moment meant to the people watching from that small island. Think about the diaspora of players. Men who had grown up in the Netherlands, who had watched their Dutch dreams fade, who had perhaps quietly accepted they would never play at a World Cup. Now realising that the roots their parents brought with them across the ocean had just carried them to the greatest stage in football. None of these players were supposed to be here. Neither was their coach. Neither was their nation. Louis van Gaal said he couldn't become world champion with them. He was right about that part. They may well go to America as the biggest underdogs in tournament history. But Dick Advocaat, the 78-year-old little general who has seen everything football has to offer, chose a different measure of success. He chose the impossible. He chose Curaçao, and he delivered a miracle. The 2026 World Cup will have 48 nations. There will be giants: Brazil, France, England, Germany. There will be dark horses and surprise packages. But there will only be one team that the whole world will be watching with something closer to awe than expectation. One team whose existence at the tournament is itself the achievement. La Familia Azul, 156,000 people strong, the smallest country to ever qualify for a World Cup. And somehow that feels like just the beginning.